Hello, beautiful soul. How are you? I pray that you're doing well. I am bringing you some insights about anger. I don't know if you've ever had any anger that you've held on to, grudges or resentment, but I want to invite you to let it go. And the reason is because it's impacting your health, but you may not know it. See, several years ago, as I was running this wellness center in America, there was a gentleman who was referred to us for anger management. He was having all kinds of problems in his company, in his relationships. And what we noticed was when he came in, and if it was a day he had been kind of on fire, yelling at people at the office, or his kid, or his wife, soon to be ex-wife, we noticed his blood pressure was up. And his cardiologist was really worried because, they'd end up putting him on a higher dose of high blood pressure medication, which would make him have all these shaky, weird symptoms, which would increase his anxiety. And so the cardiologist was trying to tweak the dose, but we noticed it was tied to his state of mind. So as he sat down with Dr. P, my mom, and was going through his anger management work with her, I was doing the acupuncture, and I would kind of get him before the treatments, before the sessions with my mom. And what we noticed is a lot of his angry outbursts were due to unprocessed emotion and issues that he had since childhood. And his parents endured a lot of strife in the home, and his mother had just passed away like the year before. So he was very, very raw, but was not dealing with it at all. In fact, coming to us was the first time he'd really had psychological help since the passing of his mom. And you've probably heard this expression that like holding a grudge or holding on to anger is like this desire we have for vengeance for that person that we're mad at. It's like drinking poison and hoping that the other person is going to die. And that is exactly what it was in his case. The more that he was dealing with this anger and this strife, but internally, it would eventually explode, and it was affecting his heart. And so I learned very early on that it was important for us to make amends, or at least forgive and let stuff go so that it wouldn't hurt us. And I began to do that in my own life. I would assess kind of my own energy, and if I felt like I was holding resentments or grudges, I would do my own kind of internal work in forgiveness so that at least my present was peaceful. But there was another patient that taught me that when we don't process to the highest level, we may end up repeating certain situations. So have you ever known someone who said something like, why does this keep happening to me? Like mistake after mistake or accident, or they've been robbed multiple times or done wrong. And this was another thing that early in my days as a physician, it was just kind of like, that does seem kind of weird. I had this patient who, as she was going through her psychological treatments with Dr. P, I was doing the acupuncture and addressing kind of emotional connections to the body. And what we discovered in a session was she was remembering a time as a child that she was molested. And she kind of looked up and was like, I had completely forgotten that, and I've never really talked about it. And I was like, okay, go on. And she said, it seems like I must have a target on my head, because that wasn't the first time or the last time. And when she looked through her timeline, she could see multiple times that she was taken advantage of sexually. And she was like, well, why does this keep happening to me? And sometimes it is these repeated situations that is trying to reveal something deeper. So our physical health can give us these warning signs. Our body is this mirror of what's going on psychologically. And so what I found is, yes, it's good to do this forgiveness work in the present so that you can at least be at peace. But there's often a lesson. a lesson to be learned by these dramatic and traumatic situations. And in Chinese medicine, we're always looking at the root cause, like why? Why does this stuff happen? And sometimes we are just not taking heed to our intuition, like our body or that gut feeling kind of tells us, don't do that, don't trust that person, don't go down that path. And we overlook it. And if we don't follow our intuition, it's like our body was trying to warn us. There are many warning signs. But for whatever reason, we went down that path. And so what I noticed is that there is sort of a higher step in resolving and getting to the root issue. And beyond forgiveness, it's where we step into looking at the lessons and looking at them with gratitude and then shifting perspective. And so one of the keys here, for example, is if somebody did you wrong, somebody hurt you, abused you, abandoned you, robbed you, said mean things about you, what would it take for you to see that maybe they are trying to teach you something? Now, I didn't like this concept at all. It seemed like, early in my days, it was like, yeah, these people they're not trying to teach us a lesson, not consciously. But it is as if we have invited situations. There's something in our psyche that causes us to be attracted to the same people, recreate the same situations so that we can get these lessons. And each of these people, these perpetrators, are teachers. And when we can see them as that, and we can learn the lesson and take corrective action, then we can move forward with gratitude. Now, I thought, how can you ever be thankful for someone who has abused you or abandoned you or done some of these terribly awful acts? And the person that really, really brought it home to me is this beautiful healer in America named Dr. Debbie Engelman. And she and I were in this book together, Heart to Heart, The Path to Wellness. And I just wanted to meet her when I read her story and interview her, because after experiencing some of the worst abuses you could imagine, she got to this point of not only forgiving them, but blessing them and thanking the perpetrators as they were teachers on her soul journey. And so for me, that's kind of like this, I always thought it was this advanced mastery level in life that I could never imagine would be possible for me. Fortunately, I haven't experienced any serious painful trauma, but I've had enough. I've had my fair share. Well, I should say I was blind to how much. And one of the things that is really cool about us humans is we're really good at pattern recognition. We can see patterns. It's a part of our visual cortex in the brain that allows us to match things. And one of the things that I noticed when I was creating a timeline of life events, which is something we do in our Stories with Soul LifeWriting course, we ask you to divide your life up into chapter and then create a timeline of life events. And then as you look at these, you're able to start to see patterns. And in my own life, I saw these patterns that I was like, oh my God, I hadn't realized I had experienced a certain type of betrayal and jealousy. And even though there were people that I remember in my professional career or at university or even at high school, I had forgiven them. I'm like, I don't want to carry that grudge. I don't want to carry this sense of ick with me. But as I started to look at these patterns and working with one of my healers, which I'll tell you all about later in this session, the one thing that's nice about working with psychics is they also see patterns, but they can see them much faster. I needed to do this on pen and paper like we teach in our course. And he was able to see in this lifetime and past lifetimes. And what that allowed us to do is to recognize on this timeline of life events the repeated patterns and what were the lessons that each of these experiences and each of these people was trying to teach me. And you'll see if you join us for Stories with Soul, you'll start to see that you have these themes and you even have a cast of characters who recur or keep showing up in your life. And the beauty is, once you have that recognition, if you're able to go ahead and look at those lessons, practicing, meditation, calling forth your inner child when needed, if there's a healing needed, doing forgiveness work for yourself, for being in that situation, for others, even for the inner child who's carried that pain, then you can start to recognize that some of these casts of characters have kind of a theme to them, an archetype, if you will. These archetypes are sort of like a type of energy that we humans have from our collective unconscious. So the trickster, the magician, the lover, the seductress, the writer, we have these patterns, but you can also identify in your life if there is a cast of character that keeps recurring, but in different clothes and in different situations. And once you can recognize that, you can start to do the deep work of learning the lesson, doing the blessing work of forgiveness for self, for others, thanking them for teaching that lesson, and making an affirmation to yourself, to your higher self, to the universe that says, I got the lesson. I'm done with that. It is complete. I don't need any more of that coming into my life. And instead, you do the reparative work of, okay, now I know what it's like. And in my case, this experience that I had recently with this healer, it was like, I didn't even realize how much of that was still active and was affecting me. So I just wanted to give you this insight into if there are things that keep showing repeated patterns in your life, if you're holding grudges or anger, be aware that it's going to impact your health. And even though that feels like terrible and bad, it's often just a sign. Our feelings are messengers, and even dis-ease is a sign that there's something a little bit off, and you can address it. Many times you don't need drugs and medications and surgeries. Psychotherapy helps, of course, but also doing this process of life writing. And I have free resources for you so you can start the process, going through the timeline of life events with your life chapters, doing the guided meditation, and then summarizing and analyzing the things and the people and the events and the beliefs that you've taken on throughout this lifetime that may be impacting you. And then you can do the deeper work of forgiveness and inner child healing and creating a whole new personal success mantra or affirmation. If you're interested, check out the link in my bio or around this video so that you can download these practices totally for free. And then if you're inspired or you'd like a little bit of my help and guidance, then join me May 23rd and 24th for Stories with Soul. Normally it's an in-person 2-day workshop. This time it's being live streamed around the world so that you can do these life writing processes and the guided meditations and then process what's coming up. We can analyze your writing and your stories so that you heal, and quite possibly you can then share these stories if you happen to be a writer or a healer or a speaker. Your stories can also heal others. So I look forward to getting feedback from you and connecting. Much love and many blessings.